All right here for WrestlingInc.com. Andy Malnoske here with International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame President Seth Turner. Seth, it's great to talk to you here tonight. We're getting close, of course, to the big weekend up at Albany, New York, and there's this sweet program that you guys are talking about, the first ever induction weekend. Seth, how you doing? First off, how are things going?
Oh, Andy, it's a lot of work, a lot of fun, very exciting. We're, heading up to August 27th through 29th at the Desmond Hotel in Albany, New York. It's going to be here before you know it. It's go time. There's no time to relax at all.
Mm-hmm. And I know, going back to the beginning stages, of getting this off the ground and how much hustle and grit you guys have really put into this to keep this going. And we talked about getting through COVID the first year. Obviously, it's still going on now, but that first year it was very close financially and certainly trying to find that physical location for you guys. But before we get into any of that, talk about who's going to be up here. This weekend's going to be certainly a big one, and wrestling history is being made.
Well, certainly joining us up there for the induction weekend. It's being emceed and led by none other than our Hall of Fame manager, James J. Dillon. He will be co-hosting along with Bill Apter, of course, the great writer, photographer, editor of the Apter mags, our pro wrestling mags that we all grew up on. Flying up from Florida and representing New Zealand will be Bushwhacker Luke.
Yes.
The beautiful Sunny will be joining us. Coming out of Canada and former NWA champion Hands of Stone Ronnie Garvin will be joining us. Interestingly, there's a great story as a gentleman named Manny Fernandez just delivered a Hall of Fame ring to Terry Funk in Texas, and Manny is driving from Texas, doesn't like to fly, so Manny's driving up. Let's see, Virgil will be there, Irish Davey O'Hannon and Ken Jugan, and unfortunately Dominic DiNucci just passed away. He was going to be joining us, and we were really ramping up to be recognizing Dominic in a big way, but unfortunately he did pass away, and we'll miss him, but I'm probably leaving out some names, and I don't want to call it. Rock and Roll Express will be at our convention. Definitely don't want to forget those guys. Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson, just great talent, great individuals. Still can go. I watched them last week in Poughkeepsie, and I'm pretty certain I watched Ricky Morton complete a Canadian Destroyer. And it was just it was a whiplash moment because they lull you to sleep, and all of a sudden you turn your head saying, did I just see what I think I saw? So anyway, again, I'm probably leaving people out. Oh, also First Lady referee Rita Marie. And then there's another female wrestler, maybe not as well known in the U.S., but Susan Sexton, who was a female champion in Australia and did wrestle in the U.S. quite a bit back in the 70s and 80s. But again, so we are international. We want to make sure we're representing as many different groups as possible. But
yeah, and Seth, I know that you guys have put so much work and time and effort into this, as we've talked about. And for you in particular, the goal of this Wrestling Hall of Fame, certainly gotten through all that paperwork, and you have such a unique history of work that you were really one of the few people, I think, in New York State that could have made this work based on your, administrative work and schooling and everything else in between. What is the goal? I mean, what was the goal for you guys to get this thing started? Obviously, when Amsterdam and the Wrestling Hall of Fame moved down to Texas a few years ago, getting this back up at the Capitol region was so important, it was so crucial. And what made this all happen for you and say, hey, we could do this?
Andy, it's funny. I'm probably having one of those deja vu moments because I remember seeing you interview Mae Young, if I'm correct, and let's see, there was a whole row of wrestlers, great legends, and I was sort of behind you. And this was probably 2012, 2013 era.
Yeah.
You were far more involved with the Hall of Fame in Amsterdam. I was kind of just there paying attention, helping out, doing what I can, but you were more involved. But uh, uh, it was those experiences in Amsterdam when you got to rub elbows with all these great wrestlers who happened to be there. I think Baron von Raschke was there that weekend, and I remember J.J. Dillon was there because I was talking with him. And of course, you had the Destroyer, and you had um, George the Animal Steel, and you got these opportunities to have up close and interpersonal exchanges with these legends. So we missed that when that was no longer in New York State. Certainly, you could go to potentially meet and greets and maybe stand in line and get an autograph or something, but that's not what the Hall of Fame represented. It was a true museum based on the history of professional wrestling, and I appreciate that you say that maybe I was someone who could help charter the waters, and what that really dials back to is in New York, a Hall of Fame is considered a museum, and a museum is an educational institution, and that is governed by our New York State Education Department. That's how we obtained our charter. So yes, I am familiar with 25 plus years of working in schools, over 20 years of being a school administrator, how to charter the waters and turn the valves that got us the appropriate licensure that we could do business. But the goal is the brick and mortar museum. We've not left our eyes off the prize with that. Uh, we are working on that as just as diligently as we are on hosting our event. Um, nothing that I want to report publicly, but we're working again. There's a faction of us that works on that explicitly, and who knows? Maybe there'll be an announcement soon, but maybe it takes a while. These things are, we'll keep working. Um, and Andy, if I dial back, you had brought up in the first point of the interview about COVID, and I've got to tell you, there was a point in which I thought we were dead in COVID because we were just starting off our fundraisers and then had to cancel. And when you had to
Right.
cancel through PayPal, we were losing 2%. So we had $0 and we were losing 2% of everything we had to refund. So we were underwater, and people, COVID was scaring people. We didn't know what to do. And then you were part of something that dug us out of the hole. And it kind of happened when I uh, quietly went and obtained a pretty, important artifact, obtaining a Bruno Sammartino's original
Yeah.
dub. And you were the one who broke that story, and I loved it. You, myself, and Bill Apter, and we were just trying to figure out how Zoom would even work at that time.
Yeah.
And though it had just breathed life back into everything, even when there was controversy, which I love. All people want to contend this was or
Oh,
wasn't.
of course.
I love it because okay, my friend Daryl Sammartino tells me what it is. So
Yeah, and I remember that like it was yesterday. It's hard to believe it's been over a year. That's how
yeah,
much
right.
COVID has drained everybody in terms of not just those with families affected and friends and everything else, loved ones, but mentally. A lot of these things. We were talking before we started recording this Zoom call tonight, and Cornell Wrestling, in college wrestling right nearby us, didn't have a season because of the Ivy League conference canceling. And I just it dawned on me, like, wow, I haven't called a Cornell wrestling match in over a year plus, and almost two when you think about when COVID started. But going back to the San Martino thing, that was amazing. That was huge. Getting that title belt, showing that the legitimacy of this International Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. As a pro wrestling fan, how important is it to be a part of this weekend? What would be your words to fans?
Well, let me just say, I started off being just someone who went to a Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame convention meet and greet. And then if I were to run down that on my phone yesterday are guys like Brian Blair, who I'm speaking to, or on the phone with Terry Funk very regularly, or I called up Ronnie Garvin to make sure that he knew where to go, or that I'm booking Stunning and things like that. Like, there's no secret recipe. You just start doing it. People say, how do you do it? I don't know. You just do it. And then you get in the business and it's all about connections. And so you're calling this person to get that person's number, and they might not know you. So whose references can they check? So it's crazy. It's crazy when you're now fully sort of immersed and having these, conversations with individuals who you used to, just idolize. but and it becomes sort of commonplace.
Yeah, and I think, Seth, one thing I could say about working closely with Tony Villano at the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, for really years, interviewing people. I wasn't with Tony day to day, like some people were, but we had a great relationship where I was an intern there for basically almost an entire year, and I'd always come back every year, kept in contact with Tony, interviewing some of the pro wrestlers in Amsterdam, and being part of those festivities and events that was that weekend that you experienced as well. I think it's important for pro wrestlers, sports entertainment. A lot of people out there call it what they will, but the legitimacy of so many in the past, this was a way of life. This wasn't just a job. This wasn't just entertainment, so to speak. It's what they did. It's important for them and all in the industry to have someone that they can look to and have trust with. And I know Tony was someone they had, and you certainly continued every day to build that trust with that wrestling crowd and that wrestling audience, and also the performers. So they're looking at you without a doubt to say, hey, we're believing in this guy. We're seeing how much work he's doing. And obviously, when this big weekend hits, they're really going to know even more when things go down.
Andy, I've learned just to focus on what I can control, just to do what I can do. There's been ups and downs, and there's been obstacles that have been thrown in front of us. You and I were just speaking before we started recording. I had a live wrestling show that got canceled that was affiliated, and it was a fundraiser for us, and it got canceled due to health concerns for an individual. But we got surprised with that, and had 2 weeks to go before our event, and one of the third legs of the stool was pulled out from under us, and yet a great group of other individuals really congealed and came together, and it's amazing when I really sit back and think about the volunteer efforts, because everything being volunteer by such a great group of individuals from all over the world, honestly, that are working hard to make this successful. So that's what drives me, because I understand that I can't let these people down, because I know how hard they're working. I know the energies that they're putting into it. And it's in all different aspects. There's I always talk Bradley Craig, who is from the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame of Scotland. Bradley put this together with contributing authors that are just the who's who of professional wrestling. Greg Oliver, Dr. Bob Bryla, our friend Brian Westcott, Jimmy Wheeler, Stephen Yohe, Mike Chapman, Pat LaPrade, Oliver Bateman, Brian Solomon, Tim Hornbacker, Dave Meltzer, some guy, Seth Turner, Stephen Verrier, actor John Lister, Sabu, Kenny Casanova, Bertrand Hebert, Mark James, Melissa Hemmings, Ian Douglas, Dan Murphy. I mean, even Charlie Thez had contributed to this, the wife of the great Lou Thez.
Yep.
But that's just on the printed product, which is really being met with critical acclaim. When part of our induction will include some video packages that are put together by a volunteer named Mac Davis, and those who will be in attendance are going to see something that's never been part of a professional wrestling Hall of Fame induction. So it's what we're doing is we've got sort of the modern flair, and taking that all of the use of technologies that exist today, where we can now capture video or potentially live stream and do things to bring in. So maybe the inductees can't be there, but we'll have Ric Flair speaking on video, and we'll have Terry Funk, who just received his ring today, participate. So these are things that you couldn't do easily 10 and 20 years ago. So now that's the benefit we have today. It'll be a great celebration. That's the plan anyway.
Yeah, and it's incredible, as we've said, how much time and effort's gone into it. And being in live television myself and doing a lot of stuff for our NBC station here in Elmira, you do all this build up, all this prep work for a big live show, so to speak. They say the calmest moment of all of it is the actual show itself, because you're just like a calm, duck on the water, but underneath it's like, oh man, the wheels are turning a little bit, the pedal that water. But when the showtime hits, it's time to go. And you guys have never put that work in. And I'm just honored and privileged, to be a small cog, from the start of all of this, and do interviews with you guys. And when you guys, gave me the ambassador title too, just such an honor for me to have that. And so thank you for all you do for the industry.
Pleasure to have you, Andy, as part of it, and certainly wish you the best. Though, as you now have your beautiful little baby that you have to deal with, the two little kids. But Andy, it's so great to have you. But consider this, so today we had delivered the Hall of Fame ring to Terry Funk, who of course can't be there with us because it's not safe for him to be traveling in this environment. But Terry is someone who I speak to very regularly. And so this concept started a year ago from when the first ballot committee put together the collection. Imagine 5 people have to come to consensus on a full ballot. That's not easy to do. That ballot gets sent out to some 50 wrestlers and historians and writers. Then there's a process whereby you have to then go through and tally up the votes and determine who's going to win. So around November, we learned one of those would be Terry Funk. Okay, so how do we contact Terry Funk? Can he come? How's this going to work? We don't have rings. What are the rings going to look like? Let's get a hold of 3 different companies. Let's make sure we have parity. We understand what we're looking at. All right, let's design them. How much are they going to cost? Wait, we don't have any money to do this. We don't volunteer. So it's by selling T-shirts online and taking, maybe that you make a profit of $6 or $7 from each T-shirt you might sell. And if you get enough of them, then okay, well, let's order these rings. Let's keep playing. Yeah, but there's a group of us that at one point, when so many things are going crazy, I said, look, if we've learned one thing from college, it's how to throw a party. Let's just throw a party. so we just put the circle on the calendar of okay, end of August 2021, let's go throw one hell of a party in Albany, New York, and go from there. That we can do. And then everything else is falling in place along the way,
Yeah, it certainly has. We can't wait to see what happens. Certainly with the first big weekend, but also down the road. Certainly that brick and mortar establishment. You guys are working very hard, diligent on that. One of my last quick questions here tonight, and thank you for taking the time, Seth. You were probably one of the busiest guys, no question. Certainly, and not just in all of wrestling, but in maybe in all of business too. So. Wanted to ask you, this can only grow and get bigger. When you start out, in your beginning stages, it's only going to keep getting bigger and better. What do you think the future looks like, and say, in your eyes, hopefully in 10 years?
Great question. First and foremost, let's get our foothold into the one establishment. And again, we're in some good, pretty deep conversations with something that could be significant, but I don't have anything in hand, so it's nothing at this point. I think the first event that we're going to hold will be well received, but we'll also learn how to make it better and how to be more efficient. Now we've laid the groundwork, and we know which vendors to go through. We know we'll have better established connections, and I want for everyone who goes this year to already just be ready to be prepared for next year. In fact, we've booked the same weekend for 2022 at the same hotel. So, but in 5 years, though, I envision that we'll be a fully functioning museum, and we'll be having taking advantage of really modern technology, so that you can also include like VR and hologram technologies, etc. And so you can do more with potentially smaller spaces. And that we by the way, one thing we do have going on is the bronze plaques being for each one of our inductees. And this year, it's a very large group. It's a who's who of professional wrestling history. But that's how you have to start off. We're in our infancy, so let's start off with a bang, and let's put in everyone who that no one could really argue their place in history. And so that you'll see the classes get smaller, and you'll see the celebrations become more focused on smaller groups of individuals. So this year it's going to be a big celebration of professional wrestling history and acknowledging those getting inducted. In 5 years, you're going to have those inductees as the guests of honor, and the entire pyramid of the weekend built around them. That's how I think it'll change and adapt and modify.
Boy, excellent, Seth. And I got one more last quick question, pretty simple question, but aside from that, I don't think a lot of people, when they look at a new Hall of Fame, so to speak, that's just starting. Obviously, when you're getting inductees and you think about the history, there's a lot of great talent, past, present, even way, way back to the George Hackenschmidt era and guys like that, Strangler Lewis. I mean, just huge names that are in the history, right? Exactly, and I think you guys are going about it the right way because
great.
It's just that's a great photo too. It's hard to put that all together. I mean, you're talking hundreds, centuries of of work and talent. So I think you guys are doing it the right way. Kind of say, hey, this is the first year, and we're going to do as much as we can, but also make it more, as you said, make it more segmented throughout the years.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't want to pretend that we'll do everything perfect. We'll do the best that we can. We'll do a great job. I know everyone who attends our events are going to have an absolute great time. Again, the idea being that they're going to walk away, so you can't, really looking forward to the next year. Don't forget, we are also recognizing Andy Kaufman and giving him the Excelsior Award, which I will say that I personally obtained something from Jerry the King Lawler that will be part of the that award recognition. So yeah, imagine that we're now part of that chapter in this in not just professional wrestling history, but popular culture. So not to at all put ourselves anywhere near what Jerry and Andy did, but Bill's Apter's the guy who introduced them, and so here we go. We're going to be doing something pretty cool. So it's it's going to be a good time. That I will say. So I hope everyone does come out. Desmond Hotel, Albany, New York, August 27th through the 29th, 2021. Yes, we've been busting our hump to pull this off, but it's going to be a good time.
Excellent, Seth. And I don't want to forget this either. Tickets, if they can still get them, are they still possible to get them? Are they, is there walk-ups, anything like that?
Yeah, and particularly tickets for the convention will be available as long as there's room, and following COVID regulations. So that's the convention, which will run from 11 to 3 at the Desmond. Tickets for the dinner, you have to get the VIP package, which gets you everything. I want to point out New York Championship Wrestling is running a show on Friday night at the Waterville Dome, so on Friday the 27th. Part of Rock and Roll Express will be wrestling, and I'm telling you, they're still on fire. Bushwhacker Luke will be part of that. I'm certain a number of the other talent will be stopping by it. And Rachel Ellering, daughter of Precious Paul Ellering, will be part of that show. So kudos to New York Championship Wrestling. They stepped up an independent promoter sort of out of central New York, but this may be their big shot and they took it. They said, hey, we can do this. Well, good for them. They lined up some talent.
Yeah.
They got some guys ready to go. It'll be a great time. Old school professional wrestling, and then a big convention on Saturday. And let's not forget Bill Apter doing his after hours party, a one-man show of just crazy with Bill Apter. It's going to be a great time.
It's going to be great, man. It's going to be awesome. It's Seth. Last thing I want to ask you is this right here. What's been your favorite part of all this so far? I mean, it's you kind of, like you said, you wear many different hats in all this, from actual promoter, businessman, wrestler, liaison. I mean, what's been the favorite part?
the communications with all of these individual people, that just it goes on constantly. So if there's a guy, Greg Wattel, who's the one who's getting things printed, getting the 8x10s set up and ready to go, and the posters lined up. And then you've got Mike Falvo, who's running our social media, and he's a ring announcer, and he's going to be also making sure things run smoothly at the event. A guy who you'll never even know or hear about, Ken Crowley, who is just takes care of the event itself. You'll get no one will ever meet this individual in person, because that's how good of a job he does. But again, I'm going to leave people out because it's this whole, again, when I spoke about Mac Davis, who is putting together these video packages that are surreal, like they have not been used for anything like this. Bill Apter, who is on fire with everything. I want to thank Pam. I'll leave her last name out of this. JJ Dillon, and his support group. Let's just leave it at that. So it's, and then when you're also getting input. When I had this wrestling show get canceled, and I'm on the phone with Terry Funk, having a conversation with this Hall of Famer who is giving me advice about how to handle it, and it's good advice. So
Wow,
so it's those
that's awesome.
experiences. But it's everybody else who's working so hard, and so you can't let them down. So it drives you to work that much harder.
Yeah, 100%.
Um,
Seth Turner, president.
I
Oh,
can't
sorry.
without speaking about my wife, my beautiful wife, Laura Turner, who I could not be doing this without either, and who has to sit there as I, have to put in the time. So let's not forget, behind all of us, there's those who support us, and for me, it's my wife, Laura. So
Yeah, many a day I've talked wrestling, pro wrestling, college wrestling, you name it. My wife will sit there and listen, and bless her heart for that, so because that's how it goes, right? So, but Seth Turner, thank you so much for taking the time for us tonight here for WrestlingInc.com. Looking forward to that big weekend up in Albany, and we'll look forward to more in the future.
you got it, Andy.